Okay, how's everybody doing today? I hope everybody is doing good. Welcome back. This is episode number 4 of Kalibrated Live. I'm Scott, of course. We've got some stuff to go over today. But first, I was thinking about maybe introducing you guys to some of my dogs because I have some of them up here. So this is Sam. She's pretty cute. She's a very old lady. She is a German Shepherd mix. So, you know, that's her. And then the mascot, Hades, come here. Come here. Come here, Hades. Sam, move. Come here. Come here, Bubba. Come here. Here he is. He's so big. He's a great name. Come here. He's a monster. Okay, go lay down. Go lay down. Go lay down. All right. I just like to brag about my dogs. Let's do this. Let's take us over to the map. There we go. Okay, so we are looking at the map today, and we have some map updates. So just starting with the areas that don't, sorry, my dogs are going to be making some noise now. I got them all excited. I'm going to show you the parts that have not changed. So we have the Krinky bridgehead, which, let me turn on my geolocations. All right. So we have our Krinky location, which has not changed. Still, the Ukrainians are trying to hold this bridgehead. The Russians hit them regularly. We've seen a number of deep strikes lately, particularly this one on a Ukrainian logistics hub. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on Twitter. Just remember this one. We also saw another one, I think also in this area. I believe that this small area right here is basically the main logistics hub for the entire Dnieper operation. So for Ukraine. So lots of deep strikes in this area, logistics hubs getting hit, pretty detrimental to the Ukrainian war effort. This area has basically just become a counter battery war for both sides. A lot of equipment is in this area for the Russians and the Ukrainians. Daily, we see Ukrainian self-propelled guns getting hit. That's very regular in this area. And then on the opposite end, we see a lot of Russian air defense systems being taken out via like HIMARS strikes and stuff like that throughout this area for a number of reasons. The first one is the Russians want to maintain as much air dominance in this region as possible. it allows them to continuously strike the far side of the river as well as the bridgehead. But the bigger picture here is that these air defenses that are located all throughout this section of Kherson right here actually help protect Crimea from missile strikes and drone strikes and everything. A lot of the missiles are launched from this area right here down towards Crimea, where they meet their target or get intercepted by air defense. So this area has basically just become counter battery warfare. We see, like I said, we see dozens of Ukrainian artillery pieces being taken out, and then we see a noticeable number of Russian air defense systems, like something. It's not just like a Buk or something getting taken out here or there. There's radars getting hit, air defense getting hit. So that's what's going on in this region, but no map changes. Coming over to the Robotyne bridgehead. Again, I talked about this in the last episode, but the purple area is unconfirmed Russian gains, but most mapping has put it as such. We do have more progress reported on this side of Robotyne up here. This side has slowed down. Weather had worsened in Ukraine over the past couple of days. Some rain and snow and cold weather, so it hampered some offensive operations for the Russians. In some areas, it actually benefits them because the Ukrainians don't use drones. So it really depends on the situation. Moving over to Mykhailivka. This is one of the areas that I told you guys to watch with great interest. This town is just getting hammered. So is Konstantinivka. The amount of aviation, missile strikes, artillery strikes of all caliber in this area is just unbelievable. I don't know what I can even really relate it to in terms of what I've seen throughout this war. It is a particularly rough area. Almost the same as, if you guys remember Bakhmut, this cemetery area right here, and Kromove, how this area was like an absolute moonscape. That's basically what Mykhailivka is becoming. The Ukrainians are refusing to pull out of the city because if they pull out, then Russian pressure meets the 0532 highway right here, which is the main supply line of Vuhledar. So as soon as Mykhailivka falls, this entire area, like I'll show you, as well as Pabeta, this also needs to fall for the Russians to start advancing. But this whole area basically collapses, and this area down here becomes much, much harder to defend, right? So with the fall of Mykhailivka, which I think is going to happen before Avdiivka, we will see this entire sort of southern flank of the Ukrainian defense of the Donbass become compromised, and then Vuhledar, and then once Vuhledar is open, you can see that this whole area right here is just empty. I mean, there's just not good logistics, not good defensive positions. It's going to be incredibly difficult for the Ukrainians to defend this if the Russians decide to push here. It has yet to be seen if they're going to do that. But I would watch this southern area very, very closely. Moving over to Avdiivka, down in the south near Pervomaisky, the Russians have reportedly crossed this dam area right here. And if you look at how this is positioned, this little settlement, there is no access via these fields over here. There's only access via these roads that come right down through here, and this E50 highway that comes past the town. So once the Russians made it to this dam, the high side of this reservoir, and started controlling it, the Ukrainians were forced to retreat from this little part of the settlement just south of Pervomaisky. I don't know if it's actually considered part of Pervomaisky or if it's part of Oh man, I don't think I'm gonna try that one. This town's name right here. Oh, Pisky? Is it Pisky? Oh, never mind. I thought this was the town's name. I think that's the church. Pisky. So I don't know if it's necessarily considered part of Pisky or Pervomaisky or just an urban area in between, but the Ukrainians have withdrawn from this area. Reportedly, that's why it's in purple. We don't have visual confirmation yet, and the Russians have moved in and captured it. Sorry, my dog's being annoying. All right. Now we're going to move over to Avdiivka. We have pushing throughout this whole area. Some of these I didn't put in purple just because they were confirmed. So we have advances both here and here near Stepove or Severne. These advances are kind of old, but significant because putting pressure on this settlement would mean putting pressure on the 0542, which is the main supply line into Avdiivka. To the south, not a lot of changes. We're also coming up on Orthodox Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody who's about to celebrate it. I hope everybody has a safe holiday with their friends and family. I just want to mention that because during this time, news becomes slower. The weather is also bad, so that is adding to slow news. That doesn't mean that things aren't happening on the ground. It just means that you're going to get the information on a larger delay. I'm sure after the 7th, which is Russian Orthodox Christmas, we will see more videos, more footage, stuff coming out. So be prepared for that. The 8th, the 9th, that stuff will start coming out. I updated the Stepove front right here. As you can see, there has been some significant Russian advances up into this triangle. I had talked about once this triangle was taken, this is the major goal right now of the Russians. Reaching this dacha area, beginning the fighting in this dacha area is extremely, extremely important because once this is secured, the Russians will be able to attack from the flank on Nova Kalinove, or Chetny up here, and Novo Bakhmutivka right here. So this area is going to be the springboard for a much larger flower into these different areas, as well as compromising the flank and the supply line that runs into Berdichi, making the supply much, much longer and concentrated through one roadway into Orlivka and then into the backside of Berdichi. That just complicates things more and more for the Ukrainians and makes things more difficult. Around Stepove, this whole area, like I'll draw it out for you guys. This whole area, like right here down to about here, is all gray zone. So that right there is all gray zone. The Ukrainians do have positions in this area, but they evacuate them if the Russians push, and then they come back in if the Russians get pushed back. So this whole area in between Stepove and Berdichi is now gray zone, as well as I would say, probably this corner of the Avdiivka Coke plant, which we just got rumors of more progress in this area. I don't know what exactly. I don't know if they're talking about the dachas to the south of it, because that's where the Russians seem to be doing the most pushing through this dacha area into the actual city itself, trying to basically close up this pocket and begin to put a lot of pressure on Avdiivka. But they could also be talking about this area right here. I think the Ukrainians have most of their positions on this part of the Avdiivka Coke plant. A lot of the videos I've seen from Ukrainian positions, I saw a Ukrainian sniper video that looked like it was from maybe this building or one of these buildings. It was a very tall building, and it just this whole area gives the Ukrainians unnatural line of sight on the Russians approaching. So the Ukrainian sources that I follow very often talk about how the Russians are constantly pushing here, meet waves, and I just haven't seen any evidence. I've seen very little geolocated footage in this region from the Ukrainians or from the Russians to show that there's much of any fighting here at all. The Russians don't usually push industrial areas until the situation around the industrial area has become compromised. These are good places to get into really, really bloody slog fests, and I don't think the Russians are looking for that. I think the Russians are mostly focusing in this northern area, trying to push out towards Orchitny, because this is basically the major supply hub. This is where the trains can come in. I don't know if they're still coming in. You know, it's in artillery range, but this is the key. This right here is a big part of keeping Avdiivka alive. Basically, once that falls, you're gonna start to run into a lot more issues. So I think that's the way that the Russians are going. And then after that, after Orchitny and Novokalinove, you know, the flank of New York, however you say it, NIU, whatever, will be compromised, right? This is a major defensive line. If the Russians start pushing in this direction right here out of Mykhailivka, they will be able to flank around and just cause massive problems. The Ukrainians are looking like they are in a very desperate situation. I'm not going to say that the Russians are going to make some massive advances or anything like that, because I mean, probably it won't happen like that. But we are getting to the area where a dam is about to break. Whether that's the Avdiivka dam, whether that's the Bakhmut dam, whether that's up in the north around Turny, or if that's up around Sinkivka and Kupiansk. There's just too much pressure around the whole map, too much progress in specific areas. Something's going to have to give. We saw that, you know, we've seen this happen before with Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. Once the Russians had this surrounded, this entire area just kind of collapsed, right? The Ukrainians had to retreat to their next defensive line, and the flood just kind of gave way, and we saw all that progress from this area. Same thing around Bakhmut. Once, you know, Soledar to the north had been captured, we saw this flood happen right here, where Krasnohorod fell, Berkhivka fell, Yehidny fell, all within like January, February of last year. So like within a month, the Russians made more progress than they had in, you know, November, December, January through Soledar and stuff like that. So it just feels like something is about to give. The Ukrainians are struggling with everything from frontline air defense, which almost seems non-existent at this point. The only air defense systems that really seem to be operating with any efficiency are the larger Iris-T and Patriot that we've seen move to the south, Odessa, Nikolaev region. But frontline AD, shoulder-mounted air defense like Manpad Stingers seem to be almost non-existent as well. I haven't seen any in forever. Same goes for javelins. Basically everything that isn't 155 millimeter or 152 millimeter artillery shells and air defense missiles for the larger air defense that's the only thing that's really being delivered right now as well. Tanks, every tank loss you see for Ukraine is significant. Every IFV loss you see for Ukraine is significant, because these are just not being replaced with any significance, and there's no plan, at least openly stated, to replace these losses. So Ukraine continues to deteriorate. The military power continues to deteriorate, whereas Russia is still, you know, pumping out IFVs, tanks, everything as fast as they possibly can. And Ukraine is just in a losing attrition battle right now. Down here near Chasiv Yar, I updated the front, got rid of some of the purple areas that were here, and I'm showing a new frontline reality that's basically appearing in this direction. This cemetery was where Wagner was stopped during their push. They came all the way up to about here and then down the same way that the Russians did. The Russians just did exactly what Wagner did, but now the Russians have made it further. They have secured the cemetery, according to reports. They have secured this motocross track right here. They have secured the entirety of this reservoir, and now they are putting pressure on these fields and Ivanivsky itself. So, like I said, the plan should be for the Russians, if they are using their brains like they have been this entire war with the pathing which they take for their attacks, pushing along this 0506 to about this point, so you can interdict this supply route into Ivanivsky, and then from the other side, pushing up through Klishchivka into this area that Wagner also once held, and cutting the 0504 to Ivanivsky. Once that happens, again, this entire salient right here should collapse. The thing that would be preventing that is a Russian. I'm sorry. The thing that would be preventing that is a continued Ukrainian defense past the point of the position being tenable. And if that happens, it can be months. If the Ukrainians are willing to just continuously pour reserves into an area to hold it at any cost, they can continue doing that. I really don't think the Russians have a problem with that, because think about, like, what does Ivanivsky do, right? It potentially creates a forward operating position for attacks on Chasiv Yar. Chasiv Yar is much smaller, but it has Konstantinivka behind it. So once again, this is going to be a very long battle here. But once you have Klishchivka gone, this dam pretty much being the front line, I imagine, Ivanivsky becomes a frontline position. Potentially this small settlement right here across the dam will also be abandoned by the Ukrainians. This seems like the next logical defensive line. And then the Russians will push through the top of Horlivka and down this way. I believe that they will go this way, like this, and then down, just because there's a much easier crossing up here. This area is much less urbanized, so it's harder for the Ukrainians to defend this area logistically. And this, if you look at a topographical map, this is the high ground. Actually, I will bring up a topographical map right now to show you guys. So you can see what I'm talking about here. Let's see. All right. So here we can see Bakhmut, right? It's in the low ground. A lot of people don't look at topographical maps. They just look at satellite maps, and those can be very, very deceiving towards what the actual territory looks like. So if you're wondering, if you're looking at this and thinking, like, what I think is, man, the Russians are still progressing with the Ukrainians just holding this canal. If you look at this canal, it just rides the high ground all the way down, right? So the Ukrainians have advantageous positioning along this entire route, which makes the loss of Bakhmut even more surprising. It's actually, Bakhmut was the fortress, right? It had Chasiv Yar with this entire high ground back here, just defending it. But I believe that the Russians will cross over right here and push down along this high ground into Chasiv Yar, instead of where they're currently at, which is Bogdanivka right here, which is on the low ground. Ivanivsky, low ground, right? Klishchivka, low ground. So they want to capture this hill, begin putting pressure through maybe the south and the north, is how I think that's going to go. But that's just my opinion on the matter. We'll see how that works out. I'm going to take us back to the map now. All right. So that's the Bakhmut salient. This area is not being prioritized by the Ukrainians to the same extent as Sinkivka around Kupiansk and Avdiivka is. So Russian progress here has been consistent and will continue. Coming up here, we did have some map changes. We had some destroyed Russian armor right here, so this map expanded. Vassel is now in a very difficult position. The Russians are here to the north, following the railway once again. The Russians love doing this. If you're ever trying to figure out how the Russians are going to push something, look for the high ground, look for the railway lines. That's where they like to push. But other than that, Seversk front pretty stable. The Russians are pushing here, but not with the same intensity. And then coming up here, we have this advance through the Shrubyansky Forestry. I do believe that there is an advance somewhere around this area right here, but I can't confirm nor deny that. Syriac posted this update, but I haven't seen anything to qualify it, so I'm just going to hold off on that for now. Up here around Turny, this is the area where the most Russian progress is occurring. If you guys remember my last update, something like this right here was captured by the Russians, right? So this whole space right in here. And now we have this should be actually red, but I just wanted to show it to you. So I have this in red because it's Ukrainian drone footage. It potentially should be in blue, but it's not a strike and it's not showing like Russian casualties or anything. It was just drone footage showing a Russian position, two Russian positions. In fact, it was geolocated to right here and right here. So I left them in red just because they are showing Russian progress and not, a Ukrainian attack or Ukrainian action. But they are Ukrainian drone footage. So this is quite significant. This is kilometers of territory. The Ukrainians are now in a horrible position. I mean, just terrible. I don't know if I showed you guys. I think I did show you guys in the last video, and I need to add it to the map, the geolocation. But this is the area where those 2 or 3 Leopard 2A5s were destroyed. So the Russians have fire control over one of the only logistics crossings into Turny and into this area right here. Here's another one. The Russians also have fire control over that, or at least they're able to give fire support to these areas, right? And I expect that the Russians will continue pushing in this area, try to basically close off this entire pocket, force the Ukrainians to withdraw. And then once they have this border as their defense from the west, they will begin pushing south towards Torsk and into the Shrubyansky Forestry, try to get the Ukrainians out of this area. And then once the Ukrainians are out of this area, the operation towards Liman can begin. This in conjunction with Avdiivka, with the situation up in the north around Sinkivka, where the fighting has been just brutal up here. Something's got to give. We're getting to the point where something's going to give. We had video of Zelensky going and visiting Avdiivka. He was geolocated to this area right here, which is pretty impressive that he's willing to go that far. I'm pretty sure he fully understands that he's not going to be killed by the Russians, because unless it's an accident, unless they accidentally target his vehicle or something, because the Russians want him alive. Obviously, they have made no attempts on his life, that at least that we know about. They've made no attempts on his places of his domiciles, his places of work. So I'm sure they just want him alive. He's a useful idiot. He doesn't know how to conduct foreign policy and diplomacy. So he is making Russia's job easier, and through the continued non-negotiation The Russians basically have a free pass to say, well, we're going to take as much as we want, and we're going to continue doing stuff that we want to in Ukraine, and they don't want to negotiate with us. So those are the major map changes for today. I'm going to take us over to Twitter now and show you guys some stuff on Twitter because I wanted to talk about it. All right, here we go. Profile. All right. So thank you guys for 100,000 followers. If any of you are following me on Twitter, I really appreciate it. It's awesome. Like I said here, my goal a year and a half ago, my 2-year goal was 100,000 followers. I got there 6 months early, so that was pretty cool for me. And on to the next 100,000. It should not take as long, I don't think. Oh, here's my live stream. Look at that fucking idiot. Let's see. I just wanted to show this. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Can you guys see this now that it's bigger? I know we were having issues with that. I can see it. So I think you guys can see it. Can somebody confirm? Anyway, I'll start talking about it. The artillery shells used per day. Here we can see the Ukrainian summer offensive. They increased their shell consumption up to around 7,000. This is an estimate, I'm sure, while the Russians maintained a 5,000 shell consumption usage per day, which is pretty crazy to think about 7,000 artillery shells or 5,000 artillery shells being fired a day. And now we're looking at the current where Ukraine is supplementing their entire front line with as much ammunition as they possibly can get their hands on, and they're firing around 2,000 rounds per day, whereas the Russians now on the offensive are firing close to 10,000. That is a five times increase. Sorry, the Russians are firing 5 times as many shells as the Ukrainians are, which, you know, there's like these myths that Ukrainian artillery is more accurate. Whatever. It's all garbage. It's been disproven throughout this entire conflict, and I don't understand where the Ukrainian casualty numbers are coming from when you know, Russia is literally firing 5 times as many shells at Ukrainians. That there are 5 times as many 152 millimeter shells going off in Ukrainian trenches every single day. This is the only statistic. Now, I'm not saying that this statistic is 100% accurate, but this is the only statistic you guys need to look at to understand the force disbalance in Ukraine. 5 times the amount of firepower is coming down on the Ukrainians. That should mean, I mean, let's just say, well, we're not going to say 5 times the casualties, but let's just say 2 times the casualties, right? From 5 times the amount of shells being fired. That's wild. This right here is super, super unfortunate for the Ukrainians. This number right here, the ability to keep the Russian offensive suppressed is being extremely hampered by the lack of ammunition. So this kind of confirms what we've been talking about, and you know, I mean, it's just a continuation. The West cannot produce the ammunition that it needs to keep this proxy war going, whereas Russia has allies that it can buy ammunition from, as well as its own massive production. So Ukraine is not looking like they're in a very strong position right now, and I don't know why the Russians would stop with these numbers. The only thing I wish is that the Russians would get their asses together and start putting out more footage. I think it's important, but I just don't think they care. OPSEC is more important to the Russians, and you know, so on. So they release footage late often, and that's just something that we're going to have to deal with. All right. Continuing on, Ukraine battle maps posted this. Air targets destroyed in 2023. Obviously, this is probably well, I mean, I believe that this is fucking nonsense. But let's just say it's real, right? Let's just say that they destroyed. Okay, 15. Now it's 15 Kinjals that have been destroyed. I just don't know where that number comes from. So this number is bullshit. The cruise missile number, probably bullshit, but the Russians do fire a lot of missiles, so who knows? I don't remember that many cruise missile attacks this year in totality. But that it is what it is. This is the important part. I don't care about the rest of it. The claim of 1,231 assault UAVs of the Shahid type, 136 or 131. This is the significant number right here, because let's just say they have a 50% interception rate of these Guarantees, which I doubt, because we see literally these things flying across the sky at a snail's pace, and Ukrainian air defense just can't deal with it. They have spotlights and machine guns, and they just continue on flying. So, I mean, this could be real, but let's just say 50% interception rate of these drones. That means that the Russians are firing north of 2,500 drones this year. And that is with production coming online, production being increased. This is a lot of drones. This is a lot of assault drones, and 2024 is going to be even worse. I've seen some numbers that he got this wrong, and it's something like, the claim is like 2,600 or something like that, which would mean that the Russians are probably firing northwards of 4,000 drones this year, which means that in 2024 you can probably expect 6,000 to 8,000. Which is just unbelievable. I mean, if the number of targets exist, or if the Ukrainians have air defense that needs to be expended, the Russians will continue sending these. This is a horrifying picture for the Ukrainians. Add this on top of the artillery shells situation, the 2,000 to 10,000 situation. This is just looking like a nightmare. Like, you just don't have anywhere to hide. You don't have any way to respond. It just gets worse and worse. Here's one of the strikes that I wanted you guys to look at. You can see here, we're claiming is a ammunition depot. You can see it's quite significant explosion over there. We have another one as well. I don't know how far down it is, and I don't know if I really want to go through here. Oh, and this is what I wanted to talk about. So here's one of the Kinjals. I made a post about this on the Telegram. This is the one that they said that they dug out of a hole in Kiev. There it is. Pretty deep in there. They use an excavator to get it out. And that's what they're saying. It's the penetrator of the actual missile. So the tip of the missile isn't the penetrator. The penetrator is deeper in the missile, which this schematic is a guess. I just want everybody to know. Nobody knows what this actually looks like on the inside. We don't know what the penetrator looks like. This is just an assumption, probably based off of the Iskander. But we don't have, it's top secret, so we don't know what it looks like. That's just a guess. But I wanted you guys to take a look at the difference between this photo right here. Look at this. Look at what the material it's made out of, so on. And then look at this, the Kinjal that was claimed earlier in the year. These are two different materials that are being used. This one has holes in it. So this Kinjal is likely a fake, like we anticipated. This one could be real. I have no way of telling you. They could have made this and then put it in the ground for propaganda. I mean, like, honestly, this is what I would be doing if I was the Ukrainians. I would be building replicas of everything. I would be taking as many Russian vehicles off of the front lines as I could, and manipulating footage. It's just, if you're going to try to win a information war, you use every asset available to you and you lie. And so that's what we've seen here. That's what we're probably seeing here, because Ukraine probably got absolutely BTFO'd by these fucking missiles. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. We're running up on 40 minutes, so pretty sure everybody's getting tired of listening to me drone. This is my other dog, Hades. Got this for Christmas. He will be on the next stream, so tune in for that. If you guys like my content and you would like to support me, Patreon is always available. Super thanks. If you guys ask questions on either of those, I will respond. And if I don't, send me a DM. I answer my DMs, so just hit me up and I'll get to it. I have a lot going on. I have like 30 different accounts that I run for different things. So, I have my YouTube, my Twitter, my Telegram. Follow me there as well. Both of those links are on my Twitter. Those links are also in my YouTube. You can find them. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys. This is fun. I like actually being able to communicate, seeing some questions. If you guys have any questions right now, actually, I'm not in a rush. I was just getting off because I feel like I'm rambling now. But if you guys have questions right now, you want to throw in the chat, I'll answer them. They don't have to be about Ukraine. I don't really care. Do I want some help? Do I want some help with... I think I recognize you from Twitter. Yeah, I do recognize this person from Twitter. How is NATO going to get out of this mess? Honestly, at this point, I don't know. I don't know if NATO wants to get out of this mess necessarily in the way that you're referring to. I think you're talking about an off ramp. I just don't see that particularly happening. They're in a position now where the funding will probably become less and less and less. But I think that Europe is basically on the hook for this thing. It's going to the situation is going to continue to worsen, both economically and militarily for Ukraine. And that's just going to become more and more strain on the West. But I think that they're basically between a rock and a hard place right now, where the current U.S. leadership, they're all neocons, right? So they're not going to back down. Or neolibs, it's the same thing. Basically, the warmongers, they're not going to back down. They're making money. Why would they? Doesn't make any sense. Why would they change now? They're suddenly going to have a change of heart and become, I don't know, doves, like peace lovers. No, it's not going to happen. They're just making money hand over fist, and this is just going to continue. It's going to become less and less because of the election season, and Ukraine is not a voter issue at all. Nobody cares about Ukraine anymore in the United States. So the actual amount of money that's going to be going over there is going to become less and less, but there's still contracts being filled through the military industrial complex. It's what's going to happen. Let's see. Somebody asked, what do you think about Taiwan? I think Taiwan is a good distraction and a good way to scare the American public into thinking that China is some big bad monster. Taiwan, I don't think Taiwan is ever going to become a military, like an actual kinetic conflict, unless the U.S. really forces it, which they could, I guess, but it doesn't really seem like it feels like the U.S. would be looking for another proxy in the region potentially to help combat Ukraine or China in the South China Sea. But the actual Taiwan issue, I just don't think that the Taiwanese people are really on board with fighting the Chinese government. I don't think the Chinese government wants to invade Taiwan. It's just going to be bloody and not fun. And the Chinese, this is a difference between Eastern and Western thinking, and something that I've really had to wrap my brain around with the Russians, with the Chinese, with different Middle Eastern countries. They're very different culturally. Western individuals like myself, we think in a way that is very short term, fixing problems now, and not thinking about necessarily the ramifications later. So the Chinese are thinking in centuries, decades, centuries, whereas the U.S. is thinking days and weeks, right? So that's always something you have to keep in mind. I don't think that the Chinese want to go into Taiwan. I don't think that they're interested in that. They just want to maintain the status quo, and eventually they think that Ukraine will I mean, sorry, they would think Taiwan will reunite just peacefully, and I don't see why that would be an incorrect thought. With production, sure, send me a DM, and we'll do it. Let's see. Oh, I'll show this one. Here we go. Butt stuff. I mean, butt stuff on who? I mean, all right. Some people say NATO countries have way more weapons than they are saying. Yes or no? Yeah, I mean, NATO, you can just look at production. They just don't. They basically have their own militaries. Europe has given away some of its own military, actually. A lot of the Nordic countries are pretty capped out. But they still have weapons. They can still fight a war. It's just they are having a hard time with the surplus to maintain a long attrition-based war through a proxy. They're not going to give their new stuff. They can't provide air support. So it's kind of like a lose-lose in terms of what they can actually provide Ukraine. Let's see. We read this. You show the video with the Kinjal hitting, but looking closer, it looks old and not new. Am I wrong? If you're talking about the video from last week with the video with the lady filming it and then the freeze frame of the Kinjal, that one is new. It is 100% new. We have not seen that video before, and that is from the recent strike. So I believe it's a Kinjal just by the looks of it, but who knows? How do you think Odessa will be played? I've said this the entire time. I don't think Odessa will be fought over at all. There won't be any invasion in that direction. I don't think. Who knows? I just don't think the Ukrainians have that amount of sustainment for fighting. Once the Russians cross the Dnieper and that side of the country, the Ukrainian army will probably not be fighting anymore. That's my personal opinion. I believe we could see a battle for Kharkov, a battle for the other big cities in the Donbass, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk. But in terms of Odessa and Nikolaev, I just don't think that the Russians will push that until the Ukrainian government ceases to exist or the Ukrainian military is no longer fighting. Oh, let's see. Any more questions? Questions. Is there any way of predicting when big Russian missile strikes will come? Is there any pattern? Yes, there's frequently patterns, but they change. So you have to stay on top of it. You have to watch. The best way that I would recommend doing that is getting a Telegram and following the monitor channels. If any of you want those, you can DM me and I will send them to you so you can follow along and start to recognize patterns. They often, at least recently, we've seen days and days of Guarantee activity before a Russian missile strike. So that's one way. And then it's just kind of a feel it out thing, right? You can tell by the intensity of the conflict. How do you DM me? You can DM me on Telegram or you can DM me on Twitter. Let's see. How do you think the war will end in Ukraine, and how do you think it will be, and when do you think it will be over? Let's see right here. So I think that the war in Ukraine will end at this point, in my personal opinion, with regime change. It will become a Russian puppet of some sort, and the Russians will basically achieve their maximalist goals. When the Russians first invaded, and you're welcome to disagree with me on this, as my own personal opinion. I believe that the Russians were looking for a quick negotiated settlement. That's where the push from Kiev was coming from. Put pressure on the capital, force a capitulation, get autonomy for Donbass, NATO neutrality, probably EU neutrality, recognition of Crimea, and then protection of the Russian peoples. That's the deal that I would have taken if I were the Ukrainians in March in Istanbul, right? But they were deceived. They were lied to. They thought that they were going to be able to win. And so instead of just giving up the Donbass, which they already didn't control, and recognizing Crimea, which they also don't control and never will, they decided to fight. And now we're getting to the point where the Ukrainians are now lashing out towards Russian civilians, like in Belgorod. They're striking very important targets in Russia and in Crimea. So like when I say very important targets, I'm talking about things like the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. It's not really significant because nothing's happening in those buildings in Crimea, but the symbolic aspect of these strikes and what they mean is the significant part. And I believe that the Russians are now at a point where they're just going to do what they need to do and get the job done. And that's it's going to take years, probably. I would say we could be looking at 2026, 2027, when the fighting actually ceases, depending on how long Western support keeps up, how what the Ukrainian ability to mobilize is. It sounds like they're having troubles, so it might be shorter than that. But there's an untapped manpower pool both in Kiev and Lvov. They're very protected Ukrainian cities. I don't say Russian cities because they're not Russian cities. And the manpower pool from there is basically untouched because they're trying to maintain this semblance of normalcy, especially in the capital where all the money and power is. So, Kiev and Lvov are being protected from the mobilization, but there's still a lot of men in those regions. And I imagine those men are now being picked up and shipped off. So expect a long fight. The Russians are not pushing fast. If the Russians wanted to, what you're seeing right now is a very slow, controlled movement. The Russians are taking casualties. Of course, it's a war, but they're not jutting forward in areas, exposing themselves, and risking high casualties while doing this. Like the Ukrainians did during their summer offensive, during those limited attacks that they went on with their armor. The Russians could do what they did in February. I mean, not necessarily what they did in February, but they could choose an area, build up a bunch of force concentration, and then go in, say like the Sumy region or something like that. But really, what does it achieve? How risky is that? There's so much that goes into it. Whereas you can keep firing 5 times the artillery shells and winning the war just slowly on your own terms, and continue bleeding the West and forcing this horrible foreign policy to be exposed. Again, how can you DM me? You guys can DM me on Twitter or on Telegram. That's where I read. Let's see. Has the airport been repaired at all? It was in rough shape. I'm not sure which airport. Are you talking about the Donetsk airport? Because definitely not. I have no idea what airport you're referring to. Did the attack on Belgorod increase the chance of Kharkov becoming Russia? Kharkov is going to be Russia. You can just put that wherever you want it. Kharkov is a Russian city. The Russians are not going to leave without that. They're probably also not going to leave without fully Zaporozhye, probably Dnipropetrovsk, probably Poltava. I don't think Ukraine will exist after this. How much of that goes to Poland, Hungary, if the West gets involved, who knows? But no. So the Donetsk airport is still completely destroyed. It's still the front line. So no, Russia will have to leave. This is like, I don't know what the IQ on these people are, but if Russia leaves, I just want you guys to think about this. If Russia leaves, it will be the largest strategic defeat that the Russian government, the Russian military, Putin, everybody has ever seen, basically, in a very, 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 very long time, maybe since Afghanistan. But Afghanistan wasn't necessarily a failure. They pulled out different than the Americans did. I believe Afghanistan was a failure for the Americans. But that's where we're at. Thank you for that super sticker. Awesome. You guys can ask a question with super stickers if you want. super chats or whatever. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, no problem. Aren't you used to bots yet? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I'm very used to bots. Oh, are you talking about this guy I put up on the screen? Yeah. I just don't get where people are thinking about that. If that happens, like, it's regime change in Russia. Putin will not survive that. So there's just no way that can happen. There's just no way. There's the Russian economy is not suffering in a way that would predict that. The Russian military is looking stronger than ever. There's just no reason the Russians will leave. And you can just keep saying it will, they will, whatever. That's just hopium and copium. So, and just something else that I wanted to talk about, since it seems like we're kind of done with the questions here. The Polish border is now blocked too by Polish protesters. So supplies coming into Ukraine are once again being hampered. It kind of stopped for the Christmas weeks, the 2 weeks for Christmas, but now the Polish are back watching that, are blocking that border, so border crossing. So military aid, even civilian aid coming through, goods and services and such are just not going to be. No, it's not unblocked. Nobody has said that. But thank you, everybody. That's where I'm going to sign off. I'm probably going to do another live, maybe tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see if any news comes out. If not, plan for Monday. Thank you guys so much. Take care. Have a great Christmas. If anybody's celebrating right now, Happy New Year to everybody. Just take care of yourselves and be safe, everybody. Bye.